A man in Toronto put down $85,000 on a pre-con condo, a studio in Forest Hill. By the time the building's finished, the unit was worth less than half of what he agreed to pay. He couldn't close. He walked away from his deposit. And now the developer is suing him for $860,000 plus 24% annual interest. His name was in the Toronto Star, and he is not alone. 28,000 condo units are completing in Toronto this year. Thousands of buyers signed contracts in 2021 and 2022 at prices that no longer exist. And every single one of them has to make a decision. Close on a unit that's underwater, walk away and lose everything, or try to sign and take a massive loss. I'm going to show you exactly how bad this is, who is getting hurt, and what your three options look like if you're in this situation. Here is the scale of what is happening right now. In 2024, roughly 29,000 condo units completed across the GTA. In 2025, over 30,000. This year, another 28,000. That is close to 88,000 units completing in a 3-year window. And every one of those closings requires a mortgage. And every mortgage requires a buyer to come up with cash. And many of those buyers signed the contracts 3 to 4 years ago at prices that were 20 to 30% higher than what those units are worth today. Mortgage broker Ron Butler called 2026 the biggest, most problematic year. The CBC reported on this in February. The buildings are finishing, the closings are coming, and the math does not work for a lot of these buyers. Pre-con condos in downtown Toronto were selling at $1,700 per square foot in mid-2022. That was the peak. Today, completed units in those same buildings are reselling at $900 to $1,300 per square foot. That is a gap of 20 to 40% between what buyers paid and what the unit is actually worth. On a 550 square foot unit, the gap translates to 110 to 220 in negative equity before the buyer even moves in. The CBC reported on one buyer whose unit appraised at 1.6 mil. The original contract price was 2.195 mil. That is a 595,000 shortfall on a single unit. If you bought pre-con in 2021 or 2022 and your unit is now worth less than what you paid, you have 3 options, but none of them are good. Option 1, you walk away, you don't close. You lose your entire deposit. On a $600,000 to $800,000 unit, that deposit was typically 15 to 20%. That's $90,000 to $160,000 gone. But it doesn't end there. The developer then lists the unit on the open market at today's low price. The difference between what you agree to pay and what the developer eventually sells it for, they sue you for that. The Toronto Star found over 130 lawsuits from just 2 developers, Center Court and Mod Development, against buyers who couldn't close. The interest rate on those judgments is 24% per year. One buyer, Christian Todovov, bought 10 pre-con units. He lost $200,000 on one deposit alone. He's now being sued for $1 million. He told the Toronto Star it's a living hell. Option 2, you close. The bank writes your mortgage using a blanket appraisal based on the original purchase price, not the current market value. You get the keys, you move in. But you owe more than the unit is worth on day one. Your monthly carrying costs on a $600,000 unit at current rates, including mortgage, maintenance fees, and property tax, are roughly $3,500 to $4,000 a month. If you're renting it out, you're collecting $2,000 to $2,200. You're losing $1,500 a month. In 5 years, when your mortgage comes up for renewal, the bank does a real appraisal. If the market hasn't recovered to 2022 prices, and no forecast says it will, you're underwater at renewal. The bank can require additional cash or decline to renew. You close the deal, but you transfer the loss into the future. If you're watching this and thinking this might affect you or someone you know, hit subscribe. I cover real numbers in Toronto market every week. No sugarcoating. Okay, let's get back to it. So option 3, you try to sell your contract to someone else before the building closes. This is called an assignment sale. In theory, you find another buyer, they take over your contract, and you walk away with whatever the market would bear. In practice, this is extremely difficult right now. A real estate lawyer quoted by the CBC said that out of all our clients trying to sign, only one has been successful. One. Developers charge assignment fees that can be tens of thousands of dollars. The buyer pool for assignments is tiny because anyone looking at condo in this price range can simply buy a resale unit at a lower price with no assignment fees and no closing risks. And if you do find a buyer, you're selling at 20 to 30% below your original contract price. On a $700,000 unit, that's $140,000 to $210,000 loss. You keep your deposit, but you eat the gap. Let me show you how widespread this is. 21 condo projects with over 4,400 units were canceled across the GTA in the past 18 months. Those buyers got their deposit back with interest, but they lost years of planning and the opportunity to buy at lower prices. Over 130 lawsuits from just 2 developers against buyers who couldn't close. That's 2 firms. There are dozens of developers with buildings completing right now, roughly 3,000 units. And about 10% of all pre-sold condos that completed in 2025 were taken back by the developer after buyers failed to close. 10% of closings fell through. New pre-construction sales had collapsed. Only 502 units sold across the GTA in Q2 of 2025. That is 91% below the 10-year average, the lowest market activity in 30 years. The pipeline has frozen. I want to be clear who this is affecting. These are not speculators who bought 10 units to flip. Some of them are, and those are the stories that make headlines. But many of these buyers are first-time purchasers, young professionals who bought a pre-construction condo in 2021 because the only way to get into the market. They saved for years to put together a deposit. They signed because every agent, every article, every podcast told them prices only go up. Now the building is finished. The unit is worth $150,000 less than what they agreed to pay, and they're being told to either come up with a cash difference or lose everything. If you're in this situation, you need a mortgage broker and a real estate lawyer involved right now, not next month, not at closing, right now. The earlier you understand your options, the more you can negotiate. Even if you're not a pre-construction buyer, this affects you. Every unit that an investor can't hold because of negative cash flow goes back onto the resale market. That's more supply in a market that already has 5 months of inventory. Every project that gets canceled is supply that was supposed to come in 2028 and 2029 that won't exist. That creates a future shortage that pushes prices higher years from now. And even buyers who gets burned by pre-con is one fewer buyer willing to take the risk next time. The pre-con market that funded a decade of condo construction in Toronto is broken. Only 2,500 units stayed for construction in 2025 through September. That's the lowest since 1998. That's a 79% drop year over year. The short-term pain is real. The long-term supply gap it creates will define the next cycle. 28,000 condo units completing this year. Buyers who signed contracts at prices that are 20 to 30% above current values. Developers suing for millions. Banks rank mortgages on appraisals that don't reflect reality in a pre-con market that has effectively stopped. This is the biggest correction in Toronto's condo market in a generation, and most of the closings haven't happened yet. Thanks again for watching. See you soon.